The conversation around representation in photography is ongoing, as it should be. And just this week, we got another example of the blatant bias towards male photographers. This account on Instagram, Shoot Film Magazine, has 628,000 followers, and they recently posted their top 10 photos of 2023. And all 10 photographers were men. The majority of them were also white and American or European, but that's another conversation for another day. Today, we're focusing on the complete absence of women. The comments came swiftly, pointing out the lack of female presence. In response, Shoot Film Magazine always replied a variation of the following. Most reach liked photos is the metric we use to determine the top 10 posts of 2023 without getting involved with our own opinion. Completely open to using a different metric in the future for the top 10. Top 10 of male and female photographers would be a great place to start. So it's purely based on metrics, and people just like photos by men at higher rates, right? No. Let's answer the first and most logical question you probably have. Well, how many of the posts throughout the year featured women photographers? Brace yourself, because it's abysmally low. Starting with their last post of 2023 and working backwards, I looked at 139 posts. Just 14 of them featured women. That's 10%. Women are not 10% of photographers. My 20 years of experience in the field told me that men and women are photographers in equal numbers, so I looked it up. Looking at the numbers of professional photographers in 2022, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are around 210,000 professional photographers, 47.8% women, 52.2% men. That matches almost exactly my audience on TikTok, where I focus on photography. I have 102,000 followers, obviously not all professional photographers, and it's 47% female, 53% male. You'd have to be pretty oblivious to not notice that only about 1 out of 10 of your posts feature women photographers. Everything in our society favors men. The system is set up for men. It defaults to men. It's perpetuated unless we actively and consciously work against it. For those of us who have a platform, I feel like we're obligated to work against these cultural biases towards white men. 2 years ago, I did an unscientific test about diversity in photography. I Googled greatest photographers, and out of the 50 listed, it was nearly all white American and European men. There were only 9 women on the list, no black photographers, no Asian photographers, 1 South American photographer, and no Hispanic photographers. So I did that same search again today, and it brings up 24 photographers. Still, only 5 women and no people of color. Women have been photographers as long as men have, so have people of color. But in the early years of the craft, the mid-19th to early 20th centuries, their status as citizens was second class or worse, and so their work also wasn't shown or distributed nearly as broadly as their skill warranted. Creators, curators, and publishers, those of us who find, share, and educate others about photography need to actively seek out photographers who've created amazing work outside of the often studied and discussed group of known white male photographers. Sabine Weiss and Henri Cartier-Bresson were 2 photographers working out of Paris in the middle of the 20th century. They both practiced humanist street photography, which means they focused on the everyday human experience. Yet Cartier-Bresson is much more well known. Let's look at why. French photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson is regarded as one of the greatest street photographers of all time, and probably the most influential. He is credited as originating many concepts that street photography is based on, particularly with his seminal book, The Decisive Moment. Henri Cartier-Bresson came from extreme wealth, something he never sought to hide, and he never denied that this was beneficial to him either. Weiss did come from a comfortable background. Her father was a chemical engineer, but upon moving to Paris, she had to support herself with her photography. She said, quote, "From the start, I had to make a living from photography. It wasn't something artistic. It was a craft. I was a craftswoman of photography." She later said, "When I started as a photographer, I worked from 8 to 12 and from 2 to 7 and didn't have much time to take my own pictures." Now, Weiss was working during the day, making a living, so many of her photos were taken at night when she had time for her personal work. On the other hand, Cartier-Bresson wasn't pressed to do work he didn't want to do. He could pick and choose assignments based on his personal interest. Photographer Inga Morath, as the first woman to be a full member of the Magnum Photo Agency in 1955, recalled that she often only took assignments that didn't interest the big boys, as she referred to Cartier-Bresson and the other founders of the agency. Cartier-Bresson also had time to discuss and write about his personal theories and practices of photography, a photographer like Weiss would not have the time for that sort of thing. Weiss wasn't an unknown in her day. She worked for publications like Time, Life, and Vogue. 3 of her photographs were included in the famous Family of Man photography exhibition, which traveled the world between 1955 and 1962. She received grants and scholarships from organizations like the French Ministry of Culture. When you look at these 2 sets of images, in my mind, it's clear that we're dealing with 2 photographers of equal skill and talent. Yet it's clear that the reason we know Cartier-Bresson much better is because of his writings, business ventures like co-founding Magnum, his constant international travels where he would regularly meet, talk with, and mentor younger photographers. It has nothing to do with pure skill. I do want to give Shoot Film Magazine credit for one area I saw near equal representation. In April 2023, they posted 10 photographers with under 1,000 followers. There were 6 men and 4 women represented. I'll be curious to see moving forward if they work to fix this representation issue. It's not going to happen by chance. It requires conscious effort to overcome societal bias. You can't put favorite photographers to a vote or most likes or another seemingly unbiased statistic because our default as a culture is to the perspective of white male photographers. The very foundation of society is biased. Aesthetics that are noticeably more feminine or representative of the point of view of different cultures aren't as broadly successful in social media because, in my opinion, our culture's creative dial is tuned to the white male point of view. So when you take the time to actively seek out the photography of women, people of color, you see equal skill and talent. But you also get something more important than image quality, different voices and perspectives.